Blog Talk Radio.
Hello and welcome to episode number 74 of Songs of Selah here on 17 Numa Radio. This is the fourth episode now since entering season number 2 of the show earlier this month. Thank you once again to last night's guest, Douglas Cole, for appearing on the program to talk about his writing and read selections of poetry. An archive of that episode, as well as all other past episodes, can be listened to or downloaded here on the channel. I do encourage listeners to please take a moment while you're tuned in tonight to subscribe to 17 Numa Radio. It's a quick and free process. All you have to do is click the follow button that can be found on the page where the show is streaming, and that will get you all set up. And thank you especially to everyone who shares links and helps to spread the word about Songs of Selah. It is greatly appreciated. I'm your host, Scott Thomas Outler, and it is Monday, September 23rd, 2019. We're going to be here live for the next hour. Rhonda Huff will be tonight's guest, and she'll be joining the program in the next segment to talk about health, nutrition, exercise, and many other aspects concerning fitness and overall well-being. She'll also be discussing her new book, Healthy Living from A to Z, from Morgan James Publishing. I'm very much looking forward to speaking with Rhonda and hearing her thoughts about living an authentic and meaningful life. So please do stay tuned for that interview coming up shortly. The season of autumn has officially arrived. That thought alone brings a big smile to my face. What a wonderful time of year it is. The final quarter of 2019 kicks off with promises of Halloween, Thanksgiving, Christmas, and ultimately the New Year celebrations starting to knock on our doors. A cool energy blows with the wind as the weather begins to muffle the intense humidity of summer and hum with a new sense of crispness in the air. And the leaves will soon begin their beautiful transformation, bursting with bright colors that even dreams have trouble conjuring up before they eventually lay their burdens down, separate from their branches, and glide back to the ground where they will return to the soil and act as nutrients for the root system of the very same trees from which they originally grew. Pretty cool process this thing called nature has worked out along the way. I certainly tip my hat. But maybe it's better that falling leaves don't land right in the palms of your hands, but rather up ahead along the path in the distance, offering a persistent reminder of which direction to continue heading in. After all, luck is a magnet, not a final cause or destination. And maybe the bee will buzz close only to sting you, or maybe it will land on the bench right beside you and take a bath in the sunshine while you write and meditate on the dualistic reality of this sometimes perplexing existence. And maybe a car will come within feet of taking you on a nasty ride, sideways and straight down. But maybe you'll avoid the collision and start dancing with your head on a swivel instead. And maybe your brakes will fail at 50 miles per hour going straight down a hill. And maybe your life will even flash before your eyes. But maybe you'll begin slowing down naturally while going up the next hill, and be able to swing into the nearest shopping lot and slide safely into a parking spot, maybe even right between the lines. Maybe every breath in your lungs is precious. Maybe you should keep that in mind at all times. Yes, autumn is my favorite season. A sentimental feeling of nostalgia permeates the atmosphere. The air tastes more promising and full of potential. The cool wind heralds change. Memories arise like echoes from a past that sings in high spirit. The future glows with infinite white light. What an amazing time to be alive. And on that note, I thought I'd start tonight's show off with a short, simple poem that is reflective of such a serene season. This is an excerpt from my book, Happy Hour Hallelujah. It's entitled Each and Every Breath. Every breath is pure bliss, an inhalation of cosmic debris sent from the source to coat lungs with vibrations of white light. Every new dawn is a miracle, sunburnt radiation pulsing from the sky to singe flesh with encoded DNA from ethereal realms. Every touch is electric, skin-kissed by God's presence in a holy union of enlightenment accelerated through the soul. Every whisper is a song, celestial sirens humming the frequency of heaven's tune with a fiery chorus serenaded from the lips of angels. That was each and every breath. Mental, physical, emotional, and spiritual health. They're all equally important. They're all interconnected at the deepest level, and they just happen to be four of my favorite subjects in life. So I'm excited to get tonight's guest, Rhonda Huff's thoughts on those themes and much more coming up after this music break. This first track is from past guest Peter Rowitz and his Atlanta-based band Spectralux. It's called Summer's End, and that seems appropriate during this phase shift into the fall. So we'll be back on the other side.
Remind me once again just who I am, because I need to know. Ooh, you say I'm loved when I You'll have every failure, God. You'll have every victory. Ooh, oh, you say I'm loved when I can't feel a thing. You say I'm strong when I think I am weak. You say I am held when I am falling short, when I don't belong. Oh, you say I'm yours, and I believe. Oh, I believe what you say of me. I believe. Oh, I believe. Yes, I believe what you say of me. I believe.
Welcome back to Songs of Selah here on 17 Numa Radio. That was You Say by Lauren Daigle, and before that was Summer's Inn by Spectralux. If there's anyone who's interested in appearing as a guest on a future episode of the program, you can get in touch with me via email at 17numa@gmail.com or connect and send a message on Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter, and I'd be happy to take a look at your work and get you set up for an episode later this year or early in 2020. Tonight's guest, Rhonda Huff, has worked in the fitness and wellness industry for over 35 years. She has a BS in fitness and wellness with a concentration in rehabilitation and an MED with a concentration in research and curriculum design. Rhonda is also a board-certified holistic health coach through the Institute for Integrative Nutrition and the American Association of Drugless Practitioners, a certified neuro-linguistic and hypnosis practitioner through the NLP Center of New York, and a frequency-specific microcurrent advanced practitioner. Rhonda is the founder of Body and Balance Wellness and Fitness Studio, Rhonda Huff Fit, and the co-founder of the Center for Integrative Brain Health. Rhonda has helped thousands of people improve their lives through her online courses, speaking engagements, and private training. Rhonda currently resides in Newport News, Virginia, but also calls Boonville, North Carolina, and New York City home. Thank you so much for joining the program tonight, Rhonda. How are you doing?
Hi, Scott. I'm doing great. Thank you so much for having me on.
Oh, absolutely. It's a pleasure. And we've got a lot to talk about tonight. I know you have your efforts spread out through a lot of different programs that we want to get into, but being in the health industry for 35 years now, what has that journey been like, and what was the impetus that first got you started down this path?
Well, it was interesting. The very first thing that really got me interested in the field was when I ran track and field in high school, and they started using weight training during some of our training sessions. And I fell in love with weight training. I fell in love with being in the gym. And so that really kind of kicked it off. But then when I was in college, I took an aerobic dance class as a PE credit. And it was so much fun. I had a background in dance, and it was just so fun. It was so upbeat. Everyone in my class, it was like we would just come together for an hour and just have a good time and just dance and move and get our exercise in. And I was always front and center, and the lady who was teaching our class was pregnant and ended up going into labor, and we only had about a week left. And so she actually told the college, Rhonda's been there every time. She knows every routine. You know, I think she could just lead the class for the rest of the week. So that's what they let me do. And then the next year they actually hired me to teach class. At the time, I was an accounting major. And so I was falling so much in love with just that whole area that I completely decided not to go the accounting way. And I figured that out by sitting in my house doing homework. And at the time, I was on like hour 4 of this accounting homework, this huge project. And I sat up and I thought, oh my goodness, 8 to 12 hours a day, every day for the rest of my life. I cannot do this. And so I went into the advisor and I was like, I've made a mistake. I cannot be an accountant. I cannot sit still this long. I have too much energy and I don't know what I need to do, but I need to change majors. And I was so far along, she convinced me in just keeping that as a minor and then just exploring what else I wanted to do. But at the time, the college I was in, the closest thing that they had was a PE major. And so I completely switched out of accounting into a PE major. Wasn't real sure what I wanted to do with it because I didn't want to be a teacher, but I was having so much fun because I was taking gymnastics and dance and swimming and a fencing class, and I was just having so much fun that I spent a semester just playing. And then I ended up in Missouri and ended up in a college that actually had one of the very first exercise physiology programs. And so the cool thing with them was they allowed you to pick an area. And at first, I was looking at a pre-med track, and I was thinking I wanted to be in orthopedics, and, I was just like loving the human body, loving what I was learning. And then I was also taking a gymnastic class that semester, and we were in our final exam. And I had done my tumbling pass and sat down at the edge of the mat, and the guy that went behind me, he did his tumbling pass, landed right in front of me, snapped his leg in two places. I see two bones come out of a body. I see blood. I pass out and ended up having to leave for the day. And I thought, I don't think I can do that. I think I can only work with them after the doctor fixes them up. And so I ended up doing a fitness wellness track with rehabilitation as my concentration. And so once I was out of college, I worked in rehabilitation for a while with a physical therapy office. And it just kind of started evolving. But as with most people, you kind of move through life and your life takes turns as you come to roadblocks and as you figure, I need to find a way around this roadblock. And I've always been a fighter. I've always been someone that didn't give in very easily. And I started having some health problems. The first health problem was with when I was pregnant with my second child. And I had lupus, and I was quickly losing my eyesight. And I was put on all of this medication, and I was constantly on and off steroids. And for several years after that, even though I was in the fitness field and even though I felt like I was doing the best I could, I was constantly sick. I was in and out of the hospital. There was a time when for about a day and a half I was paralyzed from the waist down, and my health was just horrible. We couldn't figure out exactly how to get things corrected. And at that time, I had a friend who was going to a naturopath. And I didn't know what that was, and it sounded like voodoo to me, and I just kept resisting. I was like, I'm not going to do that. I don't know what that is. It sounds really weird to me. And finally, after getting so incredibly sick and thinking, I cannot live like this any longer, I called my friend. I said, I'm ready to see your voodoo doctor. And she laughed, and she was like, please don't call her a voodoo doctor. So I walk in, and the lady hands me a piece of paper and asked me to fill out all this stuff about what's wrong with me. And I looked at her and said, I'm not filling this out. If you're so smart, you tell me what's wrong with me. And luckily, she had the type of personality that I just needed to run across. And she pointed to a chair and said, sit down. So I sat down, she did her thing, and she nailed everything. I left there with over $500 worth of supplements. And I'm thinking, oh, my goodness, I have just spent a lot of money on a voodoo doctor. And I'm thinking there's no way this is going to help. But I was, once I say I'm going to do something, I will. And I was very compliant with taking the the herbs and the supplements that she gave me. And within a couple of weeks, I was actually feeling better. And within 4 weeks, I was off all medications. I was feeling the best I had in years. And since then, it's been about 18 years, and I've only had 2 lupus flare-ups since then. And so that kind of told me that, wow, doctors are great, but sometimes we need to take control of our own health and see what we can do on our own, and working with nature to get ourselves back to a level of health. And then the next big hurdle was I was diagnosed with breast cancer in 2006. And I was completely shocked. When I was told that it was definitely cancer, and it turns out it was a very aggressive form of cancer, and I had just kind of not really kept up with the appointments, because the first time I saw the surgeon, he said, it does look suspicious. You don't have a family history. You don't have any risk factors. He said, I think it's probably nothing, but I want for you to see my radiologist. So he gave me her name and number, and of course, the last thing I heard him say was, it's probably nothing. So I just kind of put it on the back burner, and that was in May of 2006. And by September of 2006, I had a client that I was working with at a time who was a 2-time breast cancer survivor, and every time she came in, she said, have you called that radiologist yet? And I was like, I'll get to it. So one day in September, she walks in and crosses her arms and says, I am not working out today until you make the phone call. And I said, no, I'm not going to spend your time. I promise I will call when you leave. And she said, nope, not good enough. You're going to call right here in front of me. So I called and made the appointment. And sure enough, it ended up being quite an aggressive form of breast cancer. So by the time we ended up at surgery time, they were actually calling off surgery because of some things that were going on with how it looked. So the doctor walked in and he said, well, this is definitely breast cancer. And I just looked at him and I said, well, geez, bring me some French fries and ice cream then, because apparently it doesn't matter what I eat. And he just kind of looked at me shocked, and he said, well, I've never had that response before. And I was like, well, I mean, I don't know. What are we supposed to do? And he starts telling me all of the things, because I was so young. They wanted to be very aggressive, and he's telling me all these things. I'm thinking, oh, heck no, I'm not doing all that stuff. So I just looked at him and I said, well, what happens if I just do nothing? And he said, then you will die. And at that moment, I was like, really? That's an option? I could die? I mean, it was just such a shock. And so from that moment, I did a lot of research. I went for second opinions and third opinions, and I consulted like radiology specialists, and decided that this was my life, my health, and I really needed to take control of it myself. So I said no to a mastectomy. I said no to radiation, and I said, okay, I'll do the chemo. And the chemo made me so incredibly sick that after the third treatment, I could tell I was dying. I could feel it. I knew that I was dying. But I didn't think I was dying from the cancer. I knew I was dying from the chemo. And so I didn't go back. And at the end of what should have been my final treatment, I had a follow-up appointment, and I go in, and the doctor walks in, and she claps her hands and says, we're all done with chemo. And I said, yes, ma'am, we are. She had no idea I hadn't been coming. So when I finally told her, I haven't been here since the third round, right? She said, what do you mean? And she said, well, we need to get you scheduled. We need to get you back on track. And I said, no, I'm not doing that. There's worse things than death, and chemo is one of them, and I'm just not going to do that. So for the next 7 years, I committed 2 hours a day to research. So that's over 5,000 hours. I was researching environmental toxins. I was researching food and nutrition. I was researching sleep and stress and how all of these things affect our health. And I committed myself to just doing a better job on those things. And so here I am almost 13 years later, and I'm in good health. And I'm not bragging about that because it could change tomorrow, but I've had a really good last 13 years that I truly and firmly believe had I stayed on the path I was on, I don't think I would still be here.
What an amazing story, and it's wonderful that you've been able to take control of your own health. It's great to hear whenever that is accomplished in life. What sort of protocol did you get on after you went off the chemotherapy and started to research and take nutrition to the next level in your life?
Pretty much everything that's in the book. I really started working on my stress levels because I'm a type A driven, crazy person, And I knew that I needed to find a way to calm that down. And so even though that is still my natural bent, I know how to meditate. I know how to get quiet. I know how to do those things that allow me to just call up my parasympathetic nervous system and calm the sympathetic nervous system down when I need to. I researched sleep because I'd never been a very good sleeper. I just didn't sleep. I just was 90 to nothing all the time. And so I researched sleep and tried all kinds of things on how to get better sleep, how to get yourself into deep sleep, how to get that restorative sleep, what hours I needed to be sleeping in order to do that. And also learning to love myself, because I was never a person that I was never very self-confident. I don't think the people that know me, at least the people that know me the best, know I struggle with that. But I think that most people think I'm a very confident person. I'm just like, have all this confidence and self-esteem, and I never really did. And so I had to learn how to love myself on a level that I had never done before. And part of that was leaving a marriage that was abusive and learning how to do life on my own and learning what really was normal and what I was going to allow in my life, the types of people I was going to allow around me, and the way that I would allow people to behave towards me. And so there was a lot of people that I had to kind of cut out of my life at that time in order to get myself to a healthier place. And so everything that came through that period of time and all of the research I was doing is what initially started out as just my own journey and became the book and just a way to try to help other people. Exercise was huge, but it always had been. So that wasn't something new for me. I realized when people start working through the book that the exercise component can be a little bit overwhelming if they haven't done that before. So that was something I was already doing, so I didn't really have to do much with that. The nutrition part of it, it really became more about learning what was in our food and making sure that I was putting the best quality ingredients in my body as I could. And that was definitely different. I had the mindset of, oh, well, if it's on the shelves, I mean, the government wouldn't allow anything on the shelves that would hurt us, right? And so I was very naive to that sort of thing. So that was a huge change as far as when I stopped doing the chemo and started doing a lot of research on the things that make us sick and why, first world countries have these kind of illnesses and why third world countries don't. And a lot of it boils down to what we're putting into our bodies. And so it was just an overhaul. It was a mindset. It was a nutrition set. It was a body set. Everything just had to reset. And I'd always been, I don't like to use the term religious, but I feel like that's kind of where I was initially because I was raised in a very strict Southern Baptist area. And through my divorce, I was just very hurt by the church. I was very hurt by people who I thought were my friends, people who knew the situation I was living in but still felt like that I needed to stick it out, that God was going to be upset with me because I was leaving the situation even though it was a bad situation. And so I became I just kind of shook my fist at God for quite a few years. I walked away from the church. I walked away from a lot of my friends. I just couldn't wrap my head around how someone who was supposed to love me through everything wasn't doing that. And they were instead, I felt like, judging me on a level that they didn't understand. And so after my divorce, I moved to New York City. I was up there for 3 years, and that was the most wonderful time. It was such a time of healing for me, and it was a time when God brought together so many amazing people from all walks of life, from all religions, that just came up underneath me and just loved me back to health. And so my walk now is much different than my walk was back then. So spiritually, I took a long journey, and I feel like I'm in a much better place. I feel like I'm in a much more authentic place spiritually than I was then. And I feel like, I've walked it and I understand it. And now I'm making a real choice to be in the spiritual area that I'm in now.
It's so important to realize that when you go through those restructuring of boundaries and setting up new protocols and closing some doors in life, that it's going to open up those new doors and the pathway ahead becomes more clear and more in tune with maybe what you were meant to be doing the whole time. So that's a positive story for people out there to realize that their journey is never finished. It's just moving in a new direction, even if it's the challenges that are propelling it that way. And I wanted to touch on something that you had mentioned earlier. You were talking about the great experiences you had early on with exercise through the weight training and then the gymnastics. So how do you use that to inspire clients that you take on now who maybe aren't so thrilled about exercise or think that it's a punishment of some sort almost? How do you keep it exciting for them and to get them to those new regimes?
It is so funny because at the studio, people come in and it is just so cute to watch them because they'll commiserate with each other. And so there might be 3 or 4 of the trainers training at the same time, and all of the clients will be in there like, oh, she makes you do that too, and oh, he's killing me today. And it's just really fun how they group into community and how they stand up and support each other. But they love it. It's like they keep coming back. They keep paying us to torture them. Some of our clients have been around for 15 years, and I think that we are able to deliver it in a way that they can be successful. One of the things that we really work hard as a team is that when people come in, we love them right where they are. And some people come in, if they've had a sports background or if they've had a dance background, they will catch on to things very quickly. If they've not had those backgrounds and they're an adult, it may be a thing where we have to show them proper form every single time they come in, even if they've done the exercise 100 times. And so we really try to make people feel like they are successful at what they're doing. We obviously challenge them because we want to push them to the next level. But we fully believe that it's all about movement and that you don't have to come in. We have a few people that come in wanting to do split routines and more of the aesthetic part of it. But most of our clientele just want to be healthy. They want to be pain-free. They want to live a long, happy, healthy life where they're active. They can continue to travel and continue to do things in their retirement. So that's our goal, is to have people come in and to teach them ways to get things working so that then we can really train them. So everyone that comes in goes through a very formal assessment of their movement patterns, of their posture, of their gait. And very few people that come to us for an assessment actually start right into an exercise program. Most of the time there's at least a month of just doing corrective work, because we teach that every single joint has a specific thing it's supposed to be doing. And if you have pain in your low back and you go to a physical therapist, because of the way that insurance is now, they have to treat your low back. But oftentimes the problem is not the low back. Oftentimes the problem is going to be the joint below it, which is the knees, or the joint above it, which is the T-spine. So if the lumbar spine is unstable, then the knees that are supposed to be stable are going to be unstable. The hips that are supposed to be mobile are going to be stable. So it throws everything off. So we're able to take people, look at their movement patterns, listen to where their pain is, and then develop a program that's specifically geared towards getting them functioning in the right way. So the body is just amazing. It's stable, mobile all the way up the body. So the feet are stable. The ankles are supposed to be mobile. If they're not, if you had a broken ankle when you were 13 and you never got full range of motion in that ankle back, then you're probably, as you age, are going to have foot problems and or knee problems. The knees are supposed to be stable. The hips are supposed to be mobile. the low back is supposed to be stable, even though most people move through the low back. They're supposed to be hinging at the hip joint, not through the low back. So the low back is supposed to be stable. And it just goes all the way up through the chain, all the way up to the head. And so when people come in, no matter how scared they are to join an exercise program, we make it very clear that you are just fine where you are. We accept you exactly where you are. We love you where you are, but we love you enough to help you get to the next step. And as long as you will trust us and trust the process, we can get you there. We've done it thousands of times.
That's great to have that ability to push through the pain sometimes there in the beginning to get those results in the end. And you touched on something there talking about the individual plans and the assessment that you take of each person that comes in. It's so important because everyone, of course, has the different body types and the different reactions to different foods and stimulants and that sort of thing. So what else goes into that assessment on the individual basis as far as maybe diet is concerned and the exercise and other protocols that you put into place for them?
Yes, that we do really differently as well. And we do nutrition with our clients, but one of the things that we never do is take something away from someone, because that just sets the mind up to rebel. And so one time I had a couple in, and the gentleman, he had a 3 o'clock candy bar every single day and had for years, and his wife was just over it. And so they come in for a nutritional consult predominantly for him, and I'm talking to him about nutrition, and I say to him, I will not take that candy bar away from you. And his wife looked at me and said, wait, what? You won't? That's what I'm paying you for. And I said, no, because we want his body to give it up voluntarily. So what we have to do is get the body healthy enough that it's no longer craving the sugar. Because when you crave sugar, your body is crying out for energy. So it makes complete sense that at 3 o'clock every day, when most normal people have a slump in their energy levels, he's wanting a candy bar. Because our mind thinks, oh, I have no energy, I need sugar. But, of course, we also know that that causes a spike and then a drop lower than baseline. So it doesn't work in the long run, but temporarily and immediately it's that quick jolt. And so what we teach people, we give them just a few things to take away from in the beginning. The first one is just add more green. We need more green vegetables. And so for the gentleman that had the 3 o'clock candy bar, I said, you can have that 3 o'clock candy bar, but before you eat that candy bar, you have to eat a handful of a green vegetable. And eventually I want that to be something like kale or Swiss chard, something that's very bitter. But you can start out with something as simple as celery, as long as it's green. And sure enough, within, about 4 to 6 weeks, most people's cravings will go away if they're consistently doing that. So before they eat anything else, I tell them to eat something green. Before you have your bacon and eggs in the morning, eat something green, whether it's a handful of spinach. I don't even care what it is. I don't care if it's raw or cooked, but just make sure that you eat it before you put anything else into your mouth. And eventually what we do is work with people to get them so that their energy levels are restored because of the food. They're now getting nutrition, especially people that eat a lot of meat but they don't like vegetables. They're not getting any of the micronutrients because the micronutrients come from the fruits and vegetables. So if we can get people to increase, especially their vegetables, increase fruit a little bit if they're not having trouble with sugar, then most of their sugar cravings will go away. And if they're working with different other kinds of cravings, let's say if they are craving potato chips, then my first question is, are you craving the crunch or are you craving the salt? If they're craving the salt, then I want them to take minerals, or I want them to eat seaweed or something that's higher in minerals. If they're craving the crunch, then I want to work with them on dealing with frustration, dealing with anger, because people who crave crunch, if you think about crunching on something, it kind of drowns out the noise in your head for a moment. And so a lot of times people who crave the crunch are having a lot of trouble expressing their anger or expressing their frustration, and they're holding it in. And so we work with them as far as giving them crunchy vegetables or crunchy fruit, but we also work with them on like neurolinguistic programming, ways to deal with that frustration and that anger. Oftentimes it is either work-related or relationship-related. And so we can work on those things on that level. And then half your body weight in ounces of water. We get people just drinking more water, just being more hydrated. If they're craving something that's creamy, like ice cream, that's always a fun one because my first question is, when was the last time you craved something creamy? And they'll tell me, and I'll say, while you were craving that, what else was going on in your life? Did you by any chance feel unappreciated? And you would not believe how many people actually start crying at that point. So oftentimes when we're craving creamy comfort foods, it's not that our body needs those foods, it's that our body, our brain, and our heart, we need to know we're appreciated. And sometimes it's a matter of people just need a hug once in a while.
A lot of great advice packed into that. I really like the idea of adding in things instead of trying to take away until the body naturally acclimates, and then it just sort of gets rid of the negative things on its own. And I think that's a great way to go through. One of the things I saw while I was checking out your YouTube channel today, some of the videos you have on there with a bunch of good key tips outlining some of the chapters in the book that you did, was your response to Don Miguel Ruiz's The Four Agreements and what that book meant to you in your life. Could you talk a little bit about the philosophy that instilled in you?
Yes. Oh, my goodness. That was just one of the most meaningful things that I have ever read. And at the time that I read it, I was really, really struggling with feeling like I just wasn't doing anything well. I felt like I was just banging my head against a brick wall, and it just felt like I was failing at everything. And so when I started reading his book, one of the four agreements was always do your best. And when I first read that heading, I got mad because I was like, I am doing my best, and yet I'm failing all the time, and I can't figure this out, and I don't know why this is happening. But then I continued to read on, and what he says is that you do your best, and your best will change from day to day. And that was really the first time that I had thought about that I was measuring my best by my all-time personal best record of anything that I'd ever done. And that's how I measured everything I did. It was like, oh, well, 20 years ago, I could lift more weight than that, so I'm a failure. I mean, it was just one of those things that in my mind, I wanted to continue being my best, but my best could have been something that was 20 years ago or 30 years ago. And so to read him saying that your best not only will be different from year to year, your best will be different from day to day, depending on how well you've eaten that day, how well you slept the night before, how stressed out you are, other things that are going on in your life. And just to know that, okay, if I know that I am doing my very best, then that needs to be enough. I need to be enough. And that was so liberating for me. It was like someone took just a load of bricks off my chest. And it gave me freedom to fail. It gave me freedom to look at things from a perspective of, well, that wasn't my best, but it was the best I could do at the moment. Now how can I improve? The other one was don't take anything personally. And it's very true. You know, they say it takes 9 compliments to offset 1 negative. And I know for me that is so true. It's like we want to hear people say the positive, but then when someone has some negative feedback for us, that's oftentimes hard to swallow. And I surround myself with people. My friends are very good at just, iron sharpens iron. My friends are very good to call it like it is. And I have people in my life that don't just let me skate by. Like if I'm doing something that they think is rude, they're going to tell me that they think it's rude. Or so I have a lot of really good people in my life that keep me grounded and keep me focused and that sort of thing. But when I read what he said about when someone gives you a negative, when they say something either to you or about you to someone else, they are saying that based on their own reality. And it possibly has nothing to do with you. And really, someone else's opinion of you is none of your business. It's their opinion, and it should stay that way. It should just stay, that's their opinion. They're basing that opinion on their reality. Their reality and my reality may be completely different. But the kicker, the thing that was the most helpful for me, was the same goes for when they give you a positive compliment. It may not be that you are the best at that. They may have told you you're the best at that because from their perspective, in their reality, whatever you just said or did was the best to them. It certainly doesn't mean that you're the best. And for some reason, just knowing that was two sides of the same coin, and we can't take to heart all the negative and not the positive, or take to heart all the positive and not the negative, we really should be careful about taking to heart any of it. We need to look at it, analyze it, determine if there's areas that maybe we could have done better or if there's areas that need to change, but it shouldn't be based solely on someone else's thought. And then, of course, just to pull out the other two is be impeccable with your words. Speak with integrity, say only what you mean, be clear about what you need. I definitely don't have a problem with that one. I'm pretty much an open book. And then don't make assumptions. Finding the courage to ask questions if you don't understand something. I think that's a big one too. I think a lot of people, especially people that don't like conflict or that are very uncomfortable stepping into something that they feel may be a conflict, it's very important to know that when someone says something to you, if you don't fully understand it, you're probably making a lot of assumptions about their intent and about their meaning, and you could be completely wrong. So the best thing to do is just to clarify by asking questions.
Absolutely. Those imaginations and fantasies that sometimes bring up imaginary arguments can start snowballing quickly if we don't have that higher level of consciousness, observing them from above and keeping the subconscious in line there. You talked about
absolutely
the need to look at the good and bad aspects of what people tell us in life. That in itself takes a lot of sober self-analysis, and that plays into another thing that came out in those videos, which was your idea of being authentic with yourself and giving an honest appraisal of where your life is at. What kind of advice do you have for people to be able to get into that sort of space of consciousness where they're able to do that?
Oh, it's so hard. I think that's one of the hardest things. It was so hard for me. And there was two things that went along with that, but just the whole concept that I truly believe that healing takes place where truth resides. I feel like if we are being fake with our assessment of things, if we are trying to live a life that's not authentic, healing is never going to happen in that place, because sometimes we just have to face and accept the truth and then grow and change from that point of truth. But I feel like that not only just staying in that line of truth, you have to be able to look at yourself and love and accept yourself where you are. And I feel like those two things have to go together. And when I first started putting this book together, or the thoughts for this book, I knew that the very first affirmation that I wanted to give in the book was for them to look themselves in the eyes and to be able to say, I fully love and accept you just as you are right now. Talking to themselves, but talking to themselves from the outside looking in, looking at themselves in a mirror. And everything that's in this book, I have done. I have personally struggled through all of it. And it is not an easy journey. And that one was so difficult for me. I could not maintain eye contact with myself and say those words for a very long time. And so I know the struggle that some people are going to have with that. And it is all the way through the book. That is one affirmation that is carried all the way through the book. It starts to evolve so that they're turning it inward and being able to say, I fully love and accept myself just as I am right now. But it's very difficult. But until you can do that, until you can say, okay, this is where I am right now and it sucks. This is not the life I wanted. This is not what I signed up for. I don't like the way things are going in my life, but this is where it is. And from this point, I need to be able to say, I love you and I accept you right where you are, and then take steps to make things better. I feel like if people can't do that, they're never going to take the next step. They're going to stay stuck.
I think that's very true. Have to make that peace with yourself before you can take the next steps forward and actually reclaim your health. For anyone out there that wants to check out, maybe order a copy of your book or find out more about some of these programs you've been talking about tonight, what's the best place they can go to look that up, and what can they expect to find there?
Well, the website is www.rhondahuff.com, so that's RHONDAHUFF.com. And it talks about my story a little bit. It talks about what we do as a company. And then there's also a place that you can order the book from there. It's also in bookstores nationwide and in Canada, and it's on Amazon. So there's different ways to get the book. If they live in the area, then of course they can check us out, come in for an assessment, let us talk to them about what we can offer. We deal a lot with pain management. That's one of the probably biggest growing areas of my business right now is pain management. And for people that don't live near me, I do online programs. I do phone programs and Skype programs. So there's ways to get to me without having to live close to me. And with the book, the reason that I did the videos was so that we could put in some of the exercise things and people be able to follow along and get some of those things into their lives. So I really worked hard to try to get everything that I could put together in a concise, holistic way to make your life better. It's not a quick read. It's one of those things. Someone asked me if it would be a good book for their book club, and I said, not unless you're going to start it in January and finish it in December, because there's so many different activities, and the best way to use this book is to use it as a daily resource where you're working on one thing. And if you can't get past that page 3 with the first affirmation, then you stay on page 3 until you can, and then you move to page 4. So when I did an online program with the book in order to just kind of see how people were relating to it, I had some people who went straight through it in 30 weeks. They did the whole thing. I had some people that it took up to a year to get through the whole program. So take your time. Don't rush through it. Really use it. And I truly, firmly believe that if you take the time to do each chapter and each section of each chapter until you can get it, then it has the potential to change your life. If you try to rush through it or feel like you have to keep up with your friend that may be going through it at the same time, you won't get nearly as much out of it.
Very good. I hope that people will go there to rhondahuff.com and check out some more information. There's so many more questions I have for you, but we've only got about 5 minutes left in the program. So I was hoping maybe you were talking about going through the protocol one step at a time. Maybe here in the last couple of minutes, could you touch on one of the steps that you have included in the book, which is something you mentioned earlier, dealing with the breath work. It's one of the most simple, unconscious aspects of life, but so important and underrated a lot of times, I think. What is your thought on breath work and breath meditation for people?
Yes. Getting in touch with your breath and just learning how to breathe is so important. Most of the people I see breathe in the upper third of their lungs. They don't actually diaphragmatically breathe. And that is one thing that they know releases stress, releases anxiety. It lowers your heart rate. It lowers blood pressure. But just being able to put one hand on your chest and one hand on your stomach, and you want your stomach to move first with this breath so that you're feeling as low as you can. You want to try to feel deep into the diaphragm, which ends right about the end of your rib cage. So if you have that one hand on your stomach and you just sit and you get quiet, close your eyes so that you're not focusing on anything else, and just breathe through the nose. Let your breath go down into your body. Don't suck up into your lungs like most people will. So you breathe in through the nose, but you want to think dropping down into your body and letting your stomach come out first, then filling the lungs. And then, of course, you just reverse that and you're going to breathe out through the mouth. And if you do this before you go to bed, it will help you sleep. It'll help you fall asleep. I love playing with different counts. My favorite is to breathe in through the nose while I'm trying to go to sleep for 7 counts, hold it for 7 counts, and then breathe out for 15. So when you're breathing in, you want the in-breath to be longer than the out-breath. The out-breath to be longer than the in-breath. So in order to trigger the parasympathetic nervous system, you want to breathe in. So let's say you start with just 2 counts, because a lot of people really don't breathe properly. So let's say you breathe in for 2 counts, and then you breathe out for 4 counts. That will trigger the parasympathetic nervous system. And just so that you kind of understand, the opposite of that is when we get frustrated, how we'll breathe in and just blow it all out really fast. That triggers the sympathetic nervous system. It gets the heart rate higher, blood pressure higher. So we want to calm that down by breathing in for however many counts you can. Let's say it's just 2, and then breathing out for longer. And that will trigger the parasympathetic nervous system.
Very insightful and important information. If you're going into any sort of health protocol, having that stress level balanced out is the baseline to make it more impactful and successful. So I hope everyone takes that into consideration. And got about a minute left, so thank you so much for joining the program tonight, Rhonda. Amazing story and a lot of insight for our listeners. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me, Scott. I really appreciate your work.
Thank you so much, and hope you have a great autumn ahead. And to all the listeners out there, hope you have a wonderful season as well. If you enjoyed the program tonight, please do share it with your friends and family and help spread this information around. And hope that everyone has a great week ahead. Take care.
Take care, Scott.
Thank you.